In the 70-odd years since World War II, the free world has responded to the communist threat in two ways. The first is the Cold War model against the former Soviet Union, and the second is the engagement through investment model used with China. The Cold War brought down the Soviet economy and led to the emergence of Gorbachev, who dissolved the Soviet Communist Party. On the other hand, the massive investments the free world sent to China did not change the Chinese Communist Party, but made the regime even more aggressive globally. What has prevented the people in the free world from recognizing the failure of their China policy? Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Lei. Last year, I made a video series called The West's Misconceptions and pointed out various mistakes the West has made in dealing with China. Some people felt uncomfortable and told me, don't blame the West for China's problems. I think China's problem is everyone's now, and we're all reflecting on past mistakes. There's a Chinese saying, good medicine tastes bitter but heals the ailment. Loyal advices sting the ears but are good for correcting one's behavior. I believe wise people can accept criticism. The strongest person isn't the one with the big muscles, but the one who can face his or her mistakes, has the courage to correct them, and remains positive. Westerners grew up with freedom of speech and the right to vote. They can criticize their government and vote the politicians they dislike out of office. Westerners are also used to a free market economy built upon entrepreneurship, trust, and the rule of law. It's hard for them to understand a communist regime and their socialist state-run economy, decorated and concealed with a few props they borrowed from the free market camp.
By joining the WTO, China is not simply agreeing to import more of our products. It is agreeing to import one of democracy's most cherished values, economic freedom. The more China liberalizes its economy, the more fully it will liberate the potential of its people, their initiative, their imagination, their remarkable spirit of enterprise. And when individuals have the power not just to dream but to realize their dreams, they will demand a greater say.
That was a speech by Bill Clinton on March 8th of 2000, calling on the U.S. Congress to allow China to join the WTO. It reflects the roadmap that the free world planned to help China move toward democracy, starting from a market economy, encouraging the Chinese people to start their own businesses, gradually leading them to aspire to democracy, and finally pushing the CCP to a political reform. We know the above engagement through investment roadmap didn't work. The fundamental flaw in that model is the belief that capital in market economies can change the Chinese Communist Party. No, it couldn't, and it won't. Money will not turn a dictator into a public servant, nor will it change an authoritarian regime into a democratic one. Money only empowers them to become more tyrannical. Comparing today's CCP to what it was 20 years ago, in terms of economic power, military strength, technical expertise, its ability to control and manipulate the masses, its influence outside its borders, it's easy to see that today, more than 20 years after joining the WTO, the West has achieved the opposite of what it intended to do. With the money the West invested in China, the CCP grew only more aggressive. Total U.S. direct investment in China was $11 billion in 2000, the year of Bill Clinton's speech. It then grew tenfold to $113 billion by 2019. After the pandemic, it grew another 10% to $124 billion in 2020. These figures do not include bilateral trade and services between the United States and China, nor do they include investments in China by other countries. In 2021, the second year into the pandemic, China received a record amount of foreign direct investment, or FDI. The entire Western world has invested trillions of dollars in China since the CCP joined the WTO. Suppose the free world had poured trillions of dollars of investment into the former Soviet Union or the socialist countries of Eastern Europe. Would the Berlin Wall have fallen? Would the Soviet Union have collapsed? No. Many people in the West have visited China for leisure or business. They are impressed by China's infrastructure, modern high-rise buildings, the glitzy streets and nightlife, as well as the omnipresence of Western consumer and luxury brands. They therefore concluded that market economy is serving China well, and the engagement through investment model worked. But they ignored two basic questions. First, is the right to own private property protected in the Chinese communist system? Second, is the right to run private businesses protected by Chinese law? Talk to the farmers who lost their land and the people who lost their homes in government-forced demolitions. Talk to the home buyers who spend their life saving but will never see a home. Talk to the bank customers who lost their savings due to banking fraud. Talk to Alibaba's Jack Ma and Tencent's Pony Ma, as well as the owners of Didi Rideshare, about their various business decisions. Their answer is a big no. No matter how the CCP decorates their economy and how much the West tries to believe in China's GDP, without the rights to own private property and private businesses, there is no economic freedom. And without economic freedom, there is no market economy. Therefore, Bill Clinton's initial argument that engaging China economically would bring about other freedoms is fundamentally false. After accepting China into the WTO, Western nations have engaged in annual strategic dialogues with Beijing, hoping that a market economy would propel the regime toward democracy. Various governmental, NGO, and academic exchange programs mushroomed, believing that engagement would push China's democratic transformation forward. But the free world made a fundamental mistake. They neglected to support the Chinese people, who are the driving force to bring about a democratic transformation. Apart from some politicians' statements and a few annual reports commenting on China's human rights, the West hasn't provided substantial support to the Chinese people in their pursuit of freedom. Compared to the huge financial investments, the West's call on the Chinese regime to improve human rights was very weak and superficial. Only recently have Western governments become more vocal about the CCP's rights abuses against Falun Gong, Uyghurs, Tibetans, and so on. The various Sino-U.S. cultural, educational, business, scientific, and academic exchange programs did not benefit the grassroots Chinese people. They benefited the regime and its officials to misappropriate funds, steal Western technology, export communist propaganda, influence Western democratic process, and corrupt their Western counterparts. And the biggest irony is that the money, technical know-how, supply chain expertise, and business opportunities the free world provided to China became the CCP's credit that enforced its legitimacy. The regime tells the Chinese people, "Be grateful to the party because it is I, the almighty party, that lets you buy real estate, owns a business, and make money," while Western forces remain hostile and threatening. So you might ask, but how can the free world help the Chinese people? It's easy. Give them truthful information. Let them access uncensored information. If Chinese people could access the internet freely, the tyranny would long be gone. If the West really wanted a market economy in China, the first thing they should have enforced is the free flow of information, which is the foundation of economic freedom. What's costly to the West is that they don't seem able to give up the hope that the CCP will conduct so-called political reform. Communist political reforms do not change anything. Xi Jinping most likely believes that he is bringing about political reform with his anti-corruption campaigns, which he calls self-revolution. From his perspective, this is more incisive than any Western-style reform, but it doesn't change the nature of the CCP. The future of China seems unpredictable, but is an important topic. Some say the CCP is slowly collapsing. Others say the communist regime is too ferocious. It won't retain power and will be here for many years to come. Regardless of how long the CCP holds on to power, when it does collapse, it may be overnight, and the Chinese people won't be shocked, but many in the West will be. By now, many Chinese know why the regime will collapse because they know firsthand that the communist system is rotten to the core and is not sustainable. Some Westerners, however, still have illusions about the CCP and its so-called political reform. In my opinion, it's time to give up those illusions. Here are two of the misconception videos from last year. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. See you soon. When I say it's the end, it's the end. The end.